1. Yo, car enthusiasts. Buckle up because we're about to dive into a sweet ride that's popped up on Craigslist. A 1973 Chevrolet Impala that's turning heads and making waves. This green beauty is rolling in with a price tag of $8,500. And let me tell you, it's looking like a steal for any classic car lover out there. Now, I gotta be real with you. The seller's claiming this bad boy is in like-new condition, and from what I can see, they might not be exaggerating. We're talking about a coupe with only 73,197 miles on the clock, which is insanely low for a car pushing 50 years old. The seller's saying it's been very well maintained, and everything's in working order. Under the hood, we've got a meaty V8 engine that's probably purring like a kitten in that super clean engine bay. The automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive setup are classic combos for a smooth, powerful ride. And get this, it's still rocking all its original interior. That's a rare find, folks. The seller's confidence in this Impala is off the charts. They're claiming you can drive this beauty home or take it anywhere in its current condition. That's a bold statement, but with a solid undercarriage and everything working, it might just live up to the hype. Now, I haven't seen this car in person, so I can't vouch for every detail. But if the pictures and description are accurate, this could be a gem of a find. A clean title, low miles, and well-maintained. It's ticking all the right boxes for a classic car enthusiast. Remember though, with any classic car purchase, it's always wise to give it a thorough inspection or have a trusted mechanic take a look. But if everything checks out, this '73 Impala could be your ticket to classic car heaven. Don't sleep on this one, folks. Reach out to the seller and see this green machine for yourself. 2. We're diving into a real piece of American luxury. A 1974 Cadillac Fleetwood Talisman Brougham. Now this isn't just any old caddy. We're talking about the rare Talisman edition, which is pretty darn cool if you ask me. The seller's got it listed for $3,250 and they're firm on that price. Let's get real for a second. This car needs some love, folks. The seller's being upfront about its condition, which I appreciate. It's in what they call daily driver condition, but that comes with a few caveats. The good news is the engine runs, but there's a lifter tick that needs addressing. The rear end's got a leaky pinion seal, and the brakes are described as low and spongy. Definitely something you'll want to sort out ASAP for safety's sake. On the outside, this blue beauty's got some charm. The paint's still got a decent shine and gloss, which is impressive for a nearly 50-year-old car. But let's not sugarcoat it. There's some rust bubbling up, so you might be looking at some bodywork in your future. Now, the interior is where this Fleetwood really shines. It's described as very nice, with no rips or tears in the seats. And remember, this is the Talisman edition we're talking about. You're getting those sweet front and rear center consoles that make this model special. Under the hood, you've got the classic Cadillac V8 paired with an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive. The odometer shows 83,500 miles, which isn't too bad for its age. But remember, always take old car mileage with a grain of salt. Look, I've got to be honest with you. This isn't a turnkey classic ready for a show. It's a project car with good bones and some unique features. If you're handy with a wrench and love the idea of cruising in a piece of 70s luxury, this could be a fun ride to bring back to its former glory. Just go into it with your eyes open, knowing you've got some work ahead of you. 3. We're checking out a 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass convertible that's caught my eye. This red beauty is up for grabs at $13,500, and let me tell you, it's got potential written all over it. But it's definitely not without its challenges. Let's get real here, folks. This Cutlass is more of a project car than a ready-to-cruise classic. The seller's being straight up about its condition, which I appreciate. The paint is cracking and there's the usual rust, so you're looking at some bodywork in your future. The 350 engine is partially disabled, which means you've got some wrenching to do before this baby hits the road. But here's where it gets interesting. The seller's thrown in a bunch of brand new parts that are just waiting to be installed. We're talking a new aluminum radiator, water pump, dual derail fans, a complete Felpro gasket kit, and an Edelbrock intake with a Holley 670 Avenger carb. The 350 trans is said to be good and comes with a shift kit. All this good stuff is sitting in the trunk, ready for you to dive in. Inside, things are looking a bit better. The interior is described as being in good condition, with red and black velour and leather. You've got a Hurst dual gate shifter and a leather steering wheel, though the original wheel is included too. One hiccup: the electric front windows all need work, so factor that into your plans. On the plus side, the glass is good with no cracks, and it's rolling on some Rev 100 rims with Firestone tires. The Ram air hood adds a nice touch of muscle car flair. Now, let's talk numbers. With 107,000 miles on the clock and a clean title, this Cutlass has seen its fair share of road. But remember, for a car from '71, mileage isn't always the whole story. Look, I've got to be honest, this isn't a car for someone looking for a turnkey classic. It's for the enthusiast who loves a challenge and has the skills, or is ready to learn, to bring this Cutlass back to its former glory. There's a lot of potential here, but also a lot of work. If you're the type who gets excited about rebuilding engines, tackling rust, and breathing new life into classic muscle, this could be your next great project. Just go in with your eyes open, knowing you're in for some serious wrenching. But hey, imagine cruising with the top down in this bad boy once you've got it purring again. Now that's the American dream right there. 4. We're about to dive into a classic piece of American luxury, a 1982 Lincoln Continental that's turning heads on the market. Now, the seller's got this beauty listed for $9,000, but they're open to offers, so there might be some wiggle room there. Let's get real for a second. The seller's description is in Spanish, which adds a little international flair to this classic ride. They're absolutely gushing about this car, calling it a hermoso auto clásico, beautiful classic car in impeccable condition. Now, I always take like-new claims with a grain of salt on a car that's pushing 40 years old, but let's break it down. This Continental is rocking a 6-cylinder engine, which the seller says is a gas saver. That's a bit unusual for a luxury boat from this era, but hey, who doesn't love saving a few bucks at the pump? The odometer's showing 170,000 miles, which is a fair amount of road time, but these old Lincolns were built to last. The seller's really hyping up the condition of this ride. They're claiming the original leather seats are in great shape, the paint is impeccable, a pearl beige color, and it's in perfect working order. They even mention that the tires and battery are almost new. One cool feature they point out is the electric windows. Always a nice touch in a classic. Now, here's where I've got to keep it real with you folks. While the seller's enthusiasm is infectious, remember that this is a 40-year-old car. Even if it's been meticulously maintained, and they do say it's been kept under cover, there's bound to be some wear and tear that comes with age. It might not be visible in photos, but it's something to keep in mind. That said, if this Continental is even close to as nice as the seller claims, it could be a sweet ride for someone looking to cruise in classic American luxury. The '82 Continental has a unique style that really captures that early '80s vibe, and if it's as well preserved as described, it could turn heads wherever it goes. 5. We're diving into a real gem, a 1972 Mercury Marquis that's turning heads and dropping jaws. This white beauty is up for grabs at $13,500, but the seller's open to negotiation, so there might be some wiggle room there. Now folks, I've got to be straight with you. This car sounds almost too good to be true, but the seller's description has me believing we might have stumbled onto something special here. We're talking about a survivor car with only 15,010 miles on the clock. That's not a typo. 15,000 miles on a car that's pushing 50 years old. It's so original, it still has 1977 stickers on the windshield. Under the hood, we've got a beefy 429 V8 engine paired with an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive. Classic American muscle car setup right there. The seller claims the AC is ice cold, which is a huge plus for a car of this vintage. Now here's where it gets even better. The current owner, Bill, says he's put some serious work into keeping this beauty in top shape. We're talking new tires, shocks, exhaust, fuel pump, and alternator. That's a lot of key components that you won't have to worry about for a while. Bill's been using this as a family cruiser, and even drove it to the Syracuse Nationals for 2 years running. That tells me this isn't just a garage queen. It's a car that's been maintained to be driven and enjoyed. The seller's calling this a turnkey, affordable, gorgeous family cruiser that needs nothing. And based on the description, I'm inclined to believe him. It comes with the original build sheet, a car cover, and shop manuals. That's a trifecta of goodies for any classic car enthusiast. Now, I always advise caution when dealing with claims of like-new condition on a classic car. Even with such low mileage, age can still take its toll. But if this Marquise is even close to as good as described, we're looking at a rare find indeed. 6. We're checking out a piece of late 70s Americana, a 1977 Chevy Monte Carlo that's caught my eye. This yellow cruiser is up for grabs at $4,000, and let me tell you, it's got some potential, but it's not without its challenges. Let's get real here, folks. The seller's being upfront about the condition, listing it as fair, which I appreciate. This isn't a show car or a pristine classic. It's a driver with some miles under its belt and probably a few stories to tell. Under the hood, we've got the classic 350 V8 engine, paired with an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive. The seller claims it runs and drives excellently, which is a good start. With 95,000 original miles on the clock, it's seen its fair share of road, but for a car from '77, that's not too bad if it's been maintained well. Now here's where things get a bit more positive. The seller's put some work into this Monte Carlo recently. We're talking 4 new tires and a new battery. That's a nice little bonus that'll save you some cash and hassle right off the bat. But let's not get carried away. The fair condition rating suggests there are some issues here. The seller doesn't go into detail about the body condition, interior state, or any mechanical quirks, so you'll definitely want to give this car a thorough inspection if you're interested. Remember, folks, this is a 45-year-old car. Even with relatively low mileage and recent upgrades, there's bound to be wear and tear. The paint might not be perfect, the interior could be showing its age, and there might be some rust hiding in the usual spots. These are all common issues with cars of this vintage, especially if they haven't been meticulously maintained. That said, for $4,000, you're looking at a classic American coupe with a V8 engine that's said to run well. If you're handy with a wrench and don't mind putting in some elbow grease, this could be a fun project car or a budget-friendly classic cruiser. As always, I recommend getting a thorough inspection before buying any used car, especially one this old. But if everything checks out and you're cool with a car that needs a little TLC, this '77 Monte Carlo could be your ticket to some affordable classic car fun. 7. We're diving into a real muscle car treat today. A 1975 Chevy Nova Yenko clone that's turning heads and rumbling hearts. This blue beauty is up for grabs at $2,500, and let me tell you, it's got some serious potential for the right enthusiast. Now let's get real here. This isn't an authentic Yenko, it's a clone. But that doesn't mean it can't pack a punch. The seller's been upfront about the car's condition, listing it as good, which is refreshing to see. With 74,000 miles on the clock, it's seen its share of road, but for a car pushing 50, that's not too shabby. Here's where things get interesting. This Nova's been given some serious love under the hood. We're talking about a rebuilt 358 motor with a Holly carb, an L79 Corvette cam, and dome-top pistons. That's a recipe for some serious power, folks. Paired with a 350 turbo auto transmission, this thing's probably itching to lay down some rubber. The seller's put in some work to keep this beast running smooth. New dual exhaust, new radiator and fan, new master cylinder, and new tires and wheels. They've even given it a fresh paint job recently. All the lights, wipers, and gauges are said to be working, which is always a good sign in a classic. But let's keep it 100. This Nova isn't perfect. The seller mentions it still needs a few little things, and they're honest about the car having very little rust. In the world of classic cars, very little rust can mean different things to different people, so you'll want to check that out carefully. One thing to note, this Nova came from the factory with no power steering or power brakes. That means you're in for a pure, old-school driving experience. It'll give you a workout in parking lots, but hey, that's part of the charm, right? Look, I've got to be straight with you. A Yenko clone isn't going to have the collector value of a real Yenko, but for someone who wants the look and performance without the astronomical price tag, this could be a sweet ride. Just remember, With any modified classic, you'll want to give it a thorough inspection and maybe even a test drive to make sure everything's running as it should. So, if you're in the market for a muscled-up Nova that's had some serious work done, but still needs a bit of TLC, this could be your ticket to tire-smoking glory. Just go in with your eyes open, knowing you might have a few projects ahead of you. But hey, that's half the fun of classic car ownership, right? 8. We're diving into a sweet little gem I spotted on Craigslist, a 1974 Oldsmobile Omega that's up for grabs at $8,900 OBO. Now, I gotta say, this ride is looking pretty darn good for its age. The seller's description has me all revved up, and I'll tell you why. First off, this Omega's got a clean title and only 26,000 miles on the clock. That's practically nothing for a car pushing 50. The body's in great condition with no rust, which is a miracle for a 74. And it's rocking those original 14 white rally wheels that'll make you feel like you've time-traveled back to the disco era. Under the hood, we've got a 350 Rocket V8 with an Edelbrock carb. That combo should give this baby some serious oomph. It's paired with a 350 turbo automatic transmission, so cruising should be smooth as butter. The interior's described as complete and in good driver condition, which is honestly impressive for a car of this vintage. Sure, it might not be showroom perfect, but hey, that's part of the charm, right? Now, I always keep it real with you guys, so I gotta mention, the seller says it runs great, but remember, we're talking about a nearly 50-year-old car here. It might need some TLC to keep it purring, but that's part of the fun of owning a classic. All in all, for $8,900, or your best offer, this Omega seems like a pretty sweet deal for anyone looking to dip their toes into classic car ownership. It's got character, it's got style, and it's got potential. What more could you ask for? So, what do you think? Is this 74 Olds Omega calling your name? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more Craigslist car finds. Until next time, keep those engines revving and those dreams of classic car ownership alive. 9. We're checking out a 1980 Chevy Corvette C3 that's caught my eye. Now let's be real, this isn't a showroom perfect beauty, but for $4,800, it might just be the project car you've been dreaming of. This burgundy beauty is packing a 305 V8 small block under the hood with 91,000 original miles on the clock. It's got an automatic transmission, which might not excite the purists, but hey, it makes for easy cruising. The seller mentions they're the second owners, which is always a good sign. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This Feta has been sitting for a while and needs some TLC. The interior needs work, so you'll have to factor that into your budget. But here's the good news. It starts and runs, which is huge for a car of this age. Plus, it's got a clean California title, new wheels, tires, and brakes. The glass mirror tops with covers are a cool feature, and they'll definitely turn some heads when you're out for a spin. Just remember, as the seller says, it's a 1980, so expect to put in some elbow grease to get it into tip-top shape. For $4,800 firm, you're getting a running Corvette that needs some love but isn't a total wreck. The seller's right. You'd be hard-pressed to find a Corvette at this price that isn't completely trashed. This one's clean and garage-kept, which is a solid starting point. So, if you've got $4,800 burning a hole in your pocket and you're looking for a classic Corvette project, this might be your chance. It's located in American Canyon, California, waiting for someone to bring it back to its former glory. Remember, folks, with classic cars like this, you're not just buying a vehicle, you're buying a piece of automotive history. Sure, it needs work, but that's part of the fun, right? 10. We're taking a look at a true classic, a 1983 Cadillac sedan DeVille that's up for grabs at $4,200. Now, I've got to say, this blue beauty seems to be a pretty solid find for anyone looking to cruise in style without breaking the bank. Let's break it down. The seller claims this caddy is in good condition and everything is original. That's music to a classic car lover's ears. With 157,000 miles on the clock, after rolling over, this DeVille has certainly seen its share of road, but don't let that scare you off. These old caddies were built to last, and if it's been well maintained, as the seller suggests, it could still have plenty of life left in it. The engine is said to run well, and the car drives great. Now, I always take these claims with a grain of salt. but the seller's description of driving it being like sitting on a couch rings true for these old Cadillacs. They were all about comfort and luxury, and if this one's interior is in good shape, it could be a real pleasure to drive. It's worth noting that the odometer has rolled over, which isn't uncommon for cars of this vintage. Just keep that in mind when considering the true mileage. One thing that catches my eye is the "other" listed under cylinders. Typically, these DeVilles came with V8 engines, so that might be worth clarifying with the seller if you're interested. Overall, for $4,200, this 1983 Cadillac sedan DeVille could be a great entry into classic car ownership. It's not perfect, no 40-year-old car is, but it sounds like it's been cared for and could be a fun, comfortable cruiser. Remember, with any classic car purchase, it's always a good idea to see it in person and maybe even get a mechanic to take a look before you buy. But if you're in the market for a slice of American luxury from the 80s, this Caddy might just be your ticket to ride in style. 11. We're looking at a real gem, a 1963 Chevrolet Corvair Monza 900 convertible. Now, I've got to say, this one's got me pretty excited, and for $12,000 or best offer, it might just be a steal for the right enthusiast. Let's dive into what we've got here. This Corvair is sporting that iconic pancake 6-cylinder motor, which, according to the seller, runs really nice with no leaks. That's always good to hear with these older cars, especially considering the unique rear-engine layout of the Corvair. The odometer shows 36,000 miles, but the seller notes it's rolled over, so keep that in mind. However, mileage isn't everything with classics like this. Condition is key. Speaking of which, the seller claims there's no rust anywhere on the body. If that's true, it's a huge plus for a car of this age. One of the standout features here is that it's a convertible model, which adds a whole new level of fun to the Corvair experience. The sellers also put on new wheels and tires, which is a nice touch and saves you from having to do it yourself. Now, it's worth noting that the car is currently on a DMV non-op status. This means you'll need to sort out registration before hitting the road, but it's not usually a big deal for classic car enthusiasts. The automatic transmission might not be everyone's cup of tea in a classic like this, but it does make for easier cruising if you're not looking for a hardcore driving experience. Overall, this 1963 Corvair convertible sounds like it could be a great find for the right buyer. It's not perfect, no 60-year-old car is, but if the seller's description is accurate, it seems to be in good condition for its age. Remember, always inspect a classic car in person before buying, and maybe get a mechanic who knows these models to take a look. But if you've been dreaming of cruising in a piece of American automotive history, this Corvair might just be your ticket to ride. 12. We're taking a look at a true American classic, a 1965 Ford Mustang that's up for grabs at $14,500. Now let me tell you, this pony car has got some serious potential, but it's not without its quirks. First off, we're dealing with a V8 289Ci C-Code Mustang here, which is a solid engine option for these first-gen Stangs. The seller says it runs and drives well, which is always good to hear. It's packing a C4 automatic transmission, so while it might not be as engaging as a manual, it should make for smooth cruising. One of the standout features here is the working air conditioning. Now the seller admits the system is old, but hey, cold air in a 65 Mustang? That's a luxury many classics don't have. The body seems to be in pretty good shape. It's described as straight and solid, and the seller emphasizes no rust, which is huge for a car of this age. Being a California car, San Jose built no less, probably helped in that department. Now, let's talk about some of the less glamorous aspects. The paint is old, so don't expect a showroom shine here. You might be looking at a repaint job if you want it to really pop. The interior is described as black standard, which doesn't tell us much about its condition, so that's something you'd want to check out in person. On the plus side, it's got power disc brakes, a 4-barrel carburetor, and 15 wheels and tires. The odometer shows 74,000 miles, but as always with classics, take that with a grain of salt. Overall, this 65 Mustang seems like it could be a solid driver quality classic. It's not a pristine, fully restored show car, but it's not a rust bucket project car either. At $14,500, it's in that middle ground where you're getting a running, driving piece of American automotive history that you can enjoy while gradually improving. 13. We're looking at a real land yacht, a 1977 Ford Thunderbird that's turning heads with a $9,500 price tag. Now let me tell you, this isn't your average 70s cruiser, and I'm pretty excited about what we're seeing here. First off, the seller claims this T-Bird is in excellent condition and runs great, which is always music to our ears when dealing with a car that's pushing 50 years old. With less than 100,000 original miles on the clock, it seems this big bird hasn't been flown too hard over the years. But here's where it gets interesting, folks. This isn't just your standard 77 Thunderbird. The seller's done some serious upgrades under the hood. We're talking about a 351 Windsor that's been stroked out, paired with a Holley 4-barrel carb. That combo should give this luxury cruiser some serious get up and go. The drivetrain upgrades don't stop there. It's got 410 gears with a locker, which is an interesting choice for a Thunderbird. This setup suggests someone wanted this land yacht to move like a speedboat when the pedal hits the floor. Comfort-wise, you're looking at all the luxuries you'd expect from a 70s Thunderbird: AC, cruise control, and an automatic transmission with overdrive. The seller mentions new tires with less than 200 miles on them, so that's one less thing to worry about. Now, I always like to keep it real with you folks. While the seller describes the condition as excellent, remember we're talking about a 46-year-old car here. Excellent in classic car terms might not mean the same as it does for a newer vehicle. It would be worth seeing in person to verify the condition. That said, with all the work that's been done in the last year, this Thunderbird sounds like it could be a turnkey classic that's ready to cruise, with a bit of extra muscle under the hood. At $9,500 OBO, it's not the cheapest 77 T-Bird you'll find, but with all the upgrades, it might just be worth it for the right buyer. 14. We're diving into a real piece of American luxury, a 1979 Cadillac Eldorado that's up for grabs at $6,500 OBO. Now let me tell you, this isn't your average Eldo, and I've got to be straight with you about what we're looking at here. First off, this big red beauty has 150,000 miles on the clock, which is a fair bit of road for a car of this vintage. The seller says it runs and drives, which is always a good start, but here's where things get interesting and a bit unconventional. This Eldorado is packing a Buick Regal 325 engine under the hood. That's right, folks. It's not the original Cadillac power plant. Now, engine swaps can be a mixed bag. On one hand, it might solve reliability issues, but on the other, it takes away from the car's originality. It's definitely something to consider if you're a purist. On the bright side, the sellers put some work into this land yacht. We're talking a complete tune-up, a new muffler system from front to back, new brakes, and fresh fluids in both the engine and transmission. They've even had the interior detailed, which is a nice touch. Now, I've got to be honest with you, a non-original engine in a classic Cadillac is going to be a deal-breaker for some folks. But if you're not hung up on originality and you're looking for a unique cruiser, this could be an interesting option. The Eldorado's front-wheel drive layout was pretty innovative for its time, and these cars can be surprisingly comfortable cruisers. Just keep in mind that parts for these old luxury boats can sometimes be hard to come by, so factor that into your decision. At $6,500 OBO, it's not the cheapest 79 Eldorado out there, but it's not outrageous either, especially considering the recent work. As always, I'd recommend seeing it in person, and maybe getting a trusted mechanic to take a look before you commit. So, if you're in the market for a classic Cadillac with a twist, and you're okay with a bit of a Frankenstein situation under the hood, this 79 Eldorado might be worth a look. It's certainly not for everyone, but for the right buyer, it could be a fun and unique ride. 15. We're diving into a real piece of American muscle luxury, a 1966 Oldsmobile 98 that's up for grabs at $8,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old Olds, and I'm pretty excited about what we're seeing here. First off, we're dealing with a 425 cubic inch Super Rocket big block engine. That's 365 horses and a whopping 470 ft-lbs of torque, folks. This land yacht isn't just for cruising, it's got some serious muscle under the hood. Now the odometer shows 29,000 miles, but the seller notes it's rolled over. That's not uncommon for cars of this vintage, so keep that in mind. But here's where it gets interesting. This Olds was apparently sitting in a garage in Ventura for 30 years. That could be a blessing or a curse depending on how it was stored. The seller claims there's very little rust and solid floors, which is great news for a car of this age. Being a California car probably helped in that department. And talk about loaded. Power windows, power locks, power seat, power brakes, and even a power tilt and telescopic steering wheel. This was top-of-the-line luxury for 1966, but here's what really catches my eye. The long list of new parts. We're talking about a new aluminum radiator, water pump, tires, brake components, ignition parts, shocks, gaskets, power steering components. The list goes on. It seems like the current owner has put a lot of work into getting this Olds road ready. All fluids have been replaced with high-quality synthetics where applicable, which is always good to see. The transmission is the turbo-hydromatic 3-speed automatic, which should make for smooth cruising. Now, I always like to keep it real with you folks. While this Olds 98 sounds like it's in pretty good shape, remember we're talking about a 57-year-old car here. It's not going to be perfect, and there might be some quirks that come with a vehicle of this age. That said, at $8,000 for a big block Olds 98 with a ton of recent work, this could be a great opportunity for someone looking for a classic luxury cruiser with some serious power. As always, I'd recommend seeing it in person and maybe getting a trusted mechanic to take a look before you commit. 16. We're diving into a real gem from the late 70s. A 1978 Pontiac Bonneville that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $12,000. Now, I gotta tell you, this beauty is a classic piece of American automotive history. We're looking at a white coupe with a clean title and only 25,000 miles on the odometer. That's practically new for a car of this vintage. Under the hood, we've got a beefy 8-cylinder engine that's sure to give you that satisfying rumble we all love. It's rear-wheel drive, of course, because that's how they did it back then, and it's paired with an automatic transmission for smooth cruising. The seller claims to be the second owner, which is always a good sign, and they're saying everything is original except for the tires and the stereo. Now, I've got to be honest with you. The seller describes the condition as good, not excellent or mint, so we're probably looking at a car that shows its age a bit. But hey, that's part of the charm with these classics, right? The important thing is that it runs and drives, which is music to any car lover's ears. One thing to keep in mind, though, the seller is only interested in serious inquiries, so if you're just tire kicking, maybe sit this one out. Interestingly, they're open to trades, specifically mentioning a plow truck or a UTV with a plow. So if you've got one of those lying around, you might be able to score yourself a sweet deal on this Bonneville. All in all, if you're into classic American cars and you've got a soft spot for Pontiacs, this 78 Bonneville could be worth checking out. Just remember, with any classic car, it's always a good idea to see it in person and maybe get a mechanic's opinion before you commit. 17. We're checking out a sweet piece of late 70s American muscle, a 1979 Chrysler 300 that's up for grabs at $12,000. This white coupe is packing some serious heat under the hood with its 360 V8 engine, and it's got that classic rear-wheel drive setup that'll make you feel like you're cruising straight out of the disco era. Now let's get real for a second. The seller says it's in good condition, not mint, so we're not talking about a museum piece here. But with 78,000 miles on the clock, it's still got plenty of life left in it. The seller claims it runs great, which is always music to our ears. Inside, we've got some cool features that'll make you grin. We're talking full-gauge package including a tachometer, working clock, that's rare for these old beauties, bucket seats, and a console. It's also got AC and cruise control, so you can cruise in comfort. Now, I've got to be straight with you. The seller mentions there's some rust on the trunk lid. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind. On the bright side, they say the rest of the car is rust-free, which is pretty impressive for a 40-plus-year-old ride. The seller's also thrown in a bunch of new parts, which is always a good sign. They're not desperate to sell, so don't expect to haggle this beauty down too much all in all. If you're into classic Chryslers and you're looking for a solid driver with some style, This 79 300 could be right up your alley. Just remember, with any classic car, it's always wise to see it in person and maybe get a mechanic's opinion before you commit. 18. We're diving into a real gem from the golden age of American automobiles. A 1962 Cadillac convertible that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $14,900. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old caddy. We're talking about a piece of automotive history here. This beauty comes in white, which is perfect for showing off those iconic Cadillac lines. Under the hood, we've got the original matching numbers 390 V8 engine. That's right, this baby's still got its heart intact. It's paired with an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive, just as God and Cadillac intended. Now, I've got to be honest with you folks, the seller describes the condition as good, not excellent or showroom, so we're probably looking at a car that shows its 60 years of life. But hey, that's part of the charm with these classics, right? The important thing is that it's described as a good running car, which is music to any classic car lover's ears. What really sets this caddy apart are some of its unique features. We're talking rare low black leather bucket seats, not something you see every day in a 62 Cadillac. Plus, it's an AC car, which means you can cruise in comfort even on those hot summer days. Here's something that'll make you sit up and take notice. This beauty has been in the same family for 40 years. That's the kind of provenance that classic car collectors dream about. It comes with a clean, clear Oregon title, so you won't have any headaches there. Look, I'll level with you. At this price point, it's probably not a concours-ready show car. But if you're looking for a solid, drivable piece of American luxury car history that you can enjoy and maybe fix up over time, this 62 Cadillac convertible could be just the ticket. 19. We're checking out a real gem on Craigslist. A 1967 Ford Fairlane Ranchero, priced at $14,000. This isn't your everyday classic. We're talking about a rare, one-year-only model with those cool stacked headlights that'll make any Ford fan drool. Now, let's get real for a second. The seller's honest about this not being a perfect show car, but that's part of its charm. It's got a clean title, a blue paint job, with a few small issues, but hey, that's character. And only 44,900 miles on the clock. That's pretty low for a car from '67. Here's where it gets interesting. This Ranchero's had some serious work done. The owner dropped over $8,500 on repairs and upgrades last year, and they've got the receipts to prove it. We're talking new tailpipes, sweet 5-spoke American racing rims, and fresh tires with barely 50 miles on them. Under the hood, there's been a heart transplant. The original 289 has been swapped for a Ford 302 Ci V8. It's not numbers matching anymore, but the seller says it starts right up and purrs like a kitten. And get this, it's smog exempt, which is always a bonus with classics. Now, I've got to be straight with you. The seller admits it, drives like a boat. But if you're into that classic floaty ride, you'll feel right at home. It's not a speed demon, but that's not what this beauty is about. It's a cruiser, perfect for lazy Sunday drives and turning heads at local car shows. Look, for $14,000, you're getting a rare piece of Ford history that's had a lot of love and money poured into it recently. Sure, it might need a little TLC in the paint department, but there's no major rust or damage to worry about. 20. We've got a real piece of 70s luxury on our hands today, a 1978 Lincoln Continental Mark V, and not just any Mark V, but the special Diamond Jubilee Edition. Now, I've got to be straight with you folks. The sellers listed this beauty in fair condition, so let's not kid ourselves. She's seen better days. But hold on, don't write her off just yet. This land yacht is up for grabs at $6,500, which might just be a steal for the right buyer. Under that long hood, you've got the classic 8-cylinder engine, paired with an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive, just as Lincoln intended. Now here's where it gets interesting. The odometer shows only 20,500 miles. If that's accurate, it means this big girl has been spending more time in the garage than on the road. The seller says it's fully loaded, and they're not kidding. We're talking power everything, windows, brakes, seats, even a power trunk. And get this, it's still rocking the original 8-track stereo. Talk about a blast from the past. The paint is listed as custom, which could mean anything from a respray in the original color to something wild. You'll want to check that out in person. And speaking of checking things out, the seller claims everything works, including the AC and that fancy Cartier clock. Look, I've got to level with you. A car listed in fair condition is going to need some TLC. There's probably some rust, wear and tear, and maybe some mechanical gremlins hiding under all that 70s luxury. But if you're handy with a wrench and have a soft spot for these oversized icons of American excess, this could be a fun project. Remember, folks, this isn't just any Continental. It's the Diamond Jubilee Edition. They only made about 5,000 of these bad boys, so you'd be getting a piece of automotive history. Just be prepared to put in some work, and probably some cash, to bring her back to her former glory.